Welcome to our video tutorial of Dedoose, which is a web-based application that allows the user to input both qualitative and quantitative data into the system. As a result, you can do a mixed methods approach to the analysis of your research data. Now we're going to log in. And I will note that with Dedoose, one of the good things about it is that you don't need to download any software. All you need to do is have access to the internet and a web browser. Now, to start a new project, you go over here at this line over here and click Projects. So, click the plus button over here, click Add. We're going to call it Demo number 6. Description is optional, project description is optional, and we click Submit. So, our project has been added, and we're going to go from here. Now, because Dedoose is most well known because of its qualitative approach to analysis, the first thing you need to do is add the media that you're going to be analyzing into the system. So there are two ways to do it. You can click Import Data over here, like here, or you can click the plus button over here, and you get the same screen. Now, there are different types of media you can import into Dedoose. You can do images, video, sound recordings, but today we're just going to focus on just basic text analysis. So there are 3 ways to do it. You can, for example, do a copy and paste. So for example, we're going to say, call this hello. Description, that's optional. But your content could be like, hello, I am here. Click submit. And this is your document. Also, by the way, if you click the media button over here, you're going to come up with a list of all the media you have in your system. And you can also add media from this button. So for example, click here. And here, so import text, we're going to import one of the documents I had downloaded as a Word document. Click open, press, and we get this. Third way is you can add as a PDF. Now you have image-based processor, which just basically takes your PDF and that's it. Or you can try to change your PDF into a Word document. I highly recommend using the image-based processor because document-based processor, especially if you are saving a web page as a PDF, sometimes it does not translate everything correctly. So we upload that. And this is what we get. It might be close, but you can zoom in and out to your preference. Now, one of the things to remember is that, demographics are involved, quantitative data is involved. So think of, over here it says descriptors. Think of descriptors as the quantitative / the information about the demographics of the people providing the information. So click there, and this is very important. So one of the things here is that you have to add a descriptor set. So you can click here, and we're going to call this again demo. Click submit. This just keeps the groupings of the demographics together. So you can do this by hand. So for example, you can add a field, and we're just going to say gender. Description is optional. Over here, they tell you what values are allowed to be in descriptors. So for example, you can have free text, you can have numbers, and it only accepts numbers. So just remember, if you're trying to do a range of numbers, you have to use text. Date and time, same concept. And then the option list is where you have like a drop-down menu. So for here, add options, you have like male, add, and then we can have female. Add. Submit that. And you see you have, your gender, it comes up over here, your fields over here. And then, just to do another quick one, maybe name, descriptor. Now this would be, for example, free text. So then you do that, click submit. And then to physically add each descriptor in, say, for example, the first person, she's a female, her name is Joe. Submit. Now, to add another one, we'll, for example, click male, Lori. Submit. Just for a third one, female, Beth. Right? So now these are our descriptors for this. But we also know that sometimes you have a lot of data, and inputting each one by one is really annoying. So what we do is you can also import your fields from an Excel spreadsheet. So to have your Excel spreadsheets, you have to have them in a specific way. So you have to have something that defines the descriptions of the variables that you're going to be using. So at the top, you have descriptor name, memo, descriptor type, list data. You have your variables listed here. Memos is optional to fill, but you just need to have that space for the format. The type, which as I mentioned before, number, text, date, and list. Option list is the equivalent of list in this format. And then list data, where you would just basically, if it is a list, you have to define what options are available. And besides having the definitions, you need the values because you want to import the values as well. So you have your variables at the top here, and then for each individual that you were talking about, they each get their own line, as you can see here. Close that. So we're going to create a new descriptor set. So add set. And we're going to call this Glamour, because data is in relation to people from Glamour magazine. So back to 0, click import fields, and we're going to click descriptor definitions. The definitions go into this field section. Click open. If there were any errors, they would appear down here, but there isn't, so we're just going to click next. And we're going to add it to Glamour. Import to selected. So you see, they all come up here. Importing the data, click import. Go to Descriptor Values, click open. No mistakes. We're all good. Click submit. And we got the OK. So this is all of our information regarding the demographics of the people being interviewed in the media we have input into the system. So to get started, you click media back here. So we're going to start in Simone Biles, for instance. This was the Word document. Now, in order to do the qualitative research, you're going to be using something called codes. So what you can do with codes is you can add them here. So for example, we're talking about women from Glamour magazine. We could say, we're talking about beauty. You can enable tag weighting if you want, which kind of gives it if you're talking very positively about beauty, you'll get a higher number in this scale. You're talking negatively, you get a lower number. And it just helps later on with the analysis portion later on. So for example, description is optional, but it's a good idea to keep if you are used tag weighting, what the numbers mean. So higher the number, the more positive the message. Submit. Like that, right? Another way to add codes is you can do it while you are using your system. So for example, over here, Olympics her dream. So you can press add codes, and you can either do a quick code over here, and so for example we could do sports. Enter. We added it. Now because you want to potentially do tag weighting, you would have to go here to edit the code, click enable tag weighting, add your description if you want, click submit. Another way to do it is that, for example, if you see something, for example, right over here, Mary Lou Retton, what you can do, you see it, you can click Add Root Code over here, say Role Model, enable tag weighting, submit, and then when you click here, you can say Add Code. Let's see. So it pops up over here. And now we're saying role model. We're just going to double click there. Here we can change the tag weighting. It's up to us. So as you can see with the Word document, you can just do your usual, pull and drag of the cursor. Another thing, however, is when you're using a PDF, because especially we're using the image capture version of it, you are going to have to do it a little bit differently. So for example, let's see, what's something that's good here? Let's see. For example, Greatest Showman, Hugh Jackman. So for here, instead, you're going to have to pull a box across, and then it's going to come up over here. So here, we're just going to click Role Model and go here. Now, while this information is important, you needed to relate to the demographics that you had collected. So for PDFs, you would click Descriptors over here. We're talking about Zendaya. You can link it, and we're good. Going back to our Simone Biles one, because it's a Word document, it appears a little bit differently, but you're going to look for this little rectangle. Click that. Click Simone Biles. And then we're good. So now here's the fun part. You do all of this information, and then now you can do some form of analysis. So in order to do that, you click this button over here, and then you're going to get all of these charts in regards to what you can do. Now, because there's so little information, there's not a lot, I'm actually going to go to another project I had done to show you a full, well-grown analysis that can come out of using Dedoose. So, going to load this one. Now, for the year 2016, Glamour did their annual Woman of the Year. So for this entire project, what I ended up doing was I took all the articles from Woman of the Year, and I used all of these codes, as well as tag weighting, to understand how different themes were appearing in the articles in relation to the demographics that I described in the descriptors. So click Analysis. You're going to see on the side over here that there are a multitude of different types of charts you can create from the data you inputted into the system. However, as this is Dedoosed, one of their main types of charts that they can create are the mixed methods charts. So, as you can see, they've already opened it all up for you. Now, one of the cool things about the mixed methods charts is something called the bubble plots. Click here. And just for a note, the descriptors that I used in this particular project on Glamour were the same ones that I used during the demo when I was showing how to import Excel spreadsheets into the descriptors. So you might recognize a couple of these. Anyways, so you can see that this chart is in relation to how often a code is being used in relation to a certain descriptor. So, for example, we can leave the x-axis as sexism. We can change the y-axis into depression, and change how big the bubble will be into social media. So, for instance, you can see that when you highlight it over, that for anyone who is within the ID range of 7 to 9, they never talked about sexism, which is why they're 0 on the x-axis. They never talked about depression, which is why they're 0 on the y-axis, but they talked a lot about social media, hence why the bubble is fairly big. In comparison, you have this, where, people within the range of 4 to 6, they moderately talked about sexism, they moderately talked about social media, so, the bubble is semi-big, on the x-axis it's a little bit towards the middle, but because they talked about depression so little, it's very low on the y-axis. And then to change things up a bit, for example, if you had children, which the list options you had were yes, no, or not available. So for instance, if you didn't have children at all, you didn't talk about sexism really, so you're 0 on the x-axis, but you talked a good amount about depression, so you're high on the y-axis, and you moderately talked about social media in relation to everyone else, so your bubble size is moderately big. And then here, for example, if you couldn't tell from the article if the individual had children or not, they never talked about depression, they didn't really talk about sexism, but they talked about social media a lot, hence the bigger bubble. And then lastly, you have here children. If you did have children, you did talk about sexism a lot, hence why you're very high on the x-axis. You moderately talked about depression in relation to the other two descriptor options, so you're in the middle, but you didn't talk about social media, so your bubble is very small. You can also get bubble plots for example, in regards to the tag weights upon each thematic code. Another part of the mixed methods charts that you can have a lot of fun with is in regards to bar graphs. So for example, you have the codes times descriptors. So for instance, you're basically saying that in relation to certain demographics, how often or how weighty, as you can see, you can change it, are you talking about certain codes? So for instance, let's change this into, I don't know, children again. If you, for instance, regarding frequency, if you didn't have children, you were in the middle in regards to how much you talked about body politics. If you didn't have children, you talked the most out of everyone in the interviews. You talked the most about body politics, and then if you had children, you were the least likely to talk about body politics at all. However, you can change it to weight, and for this one, the higher the number, the more agenda the individual had over their own bodies. So for instance, you can see here that when you didn't have children, you were gonna express more agenda over your own body. Now in all of these, if you want to export the graph to use in your own media and such, you would click here, export, download ready, click OK to download, comes up as a Microsoft Excel sheet, you save it, and download complete, and then you're done. It will be in your files. The only thing I will note is that in some of these charts, you are given the option to download the information in various formats. So for example, I know, with the bubble plot, you can download it as a PDF. However, I will recommend keeping everything within the Excel spreadsheets because, for example, you can see here, every time your cursor goes over certain sections of the graphs, you get a little bubble of information. The Excel spreadsheets will definitely retain that information in the download, the PDFs, and some of the other formats, not so much. Now, if you want the raw data and you don't really want the graphs, just the raw data itself, in order to get that, you can click here. Now, it gives you all of these options of what you want to export, but if you want to export everything, you go and click Export Project. Of note is that when you do this, you're not going to be getting any of the fancy graphs. However, you're going to get all of this information in the form of various spreadsheets. Now, this is very helpful if you're trying to move your project into a different system or if you're trying to repurpose your project for a different purpose. So we're just going to click there, Export Project. You fill in this information. When you click Submit, you'll get an email with a related link, and you should be good to go to start downloading. And just one last simple tip is that because Dedoose is a web-based system, there actually is no save button throughout the software. It automatically saves everything for you as you're working on your project. And that ends our tutorial for Dedoose.